Okay, so today is going to be day 2 of chapter 5, section 4. Yesterday we did all of the examples using our SOHCAHTOA to solve the right triangles. So you're either going to be given an angle and one of the sides, and then you'll find the remaining 4 pieces of the triangle. Or you could also be given 2 side lengths, and you would use the Pythagorean theorem, and then you would use the inverse functions in order to find the angle measures. Remember, once you finish and you think you have all your answers, make sure that they make sense. Remember, the hypotenuse is always the largest side. It's across from the right angle. And then remember, the smallest side should be across from your smallest angle. So just make sure it's making sense. You could also do Pythagorean theorem to check your answers. Again, because they're rounded answers, they may be slightly off. And then also make sure your 3 angle measures add up to be 180. So now what we're going to do is everything that we just did. So when we covered finding these trig functions, their values in section 3, we were only using the special right triangles. And our reference angle was either a 30, a 60, or a 90. Now, when the angle measure is not one of those special angles, we're going to be using our calculator. Now, in the homework tonight, it's going to tell you to leave as many digits that show up on your calculator for the answer. But on the test, we're going to round to 3 places. So if you want to round your answers in the homework to 3 places, that's fine. But if you use the solution file to check your answers, it's going to have a whole bunch of numbers. Now also, what we didn't do any examples of yesterday, when you're solving the right triangle, if you're given the degree measure, like this one, where it's in degrees, minutes, and seconds, in order to solve the right triangle, you're going to need to convert that to a decimal degree. And we're going to have to do that on this question when we go to put it into our calculator. Now, when we input these functions into our calculator, there isn't a button for the reciprocals. So what we need to use is our reciprocal identities, and because there's not a secant button, a cosecant, or a cotangent, but on your calculator, there's a sine, cosine, and tangent button. And those are going to be the buttons we use, but again, we're using the reciprocal identities. So for example, on the first one, it's given to me as a decimal degree, so I'm good here. So what I need to use is my reciprocal identity, and I know that the reciprocal to secant is cosecant. So what I'm going to do in my calculator is enter this in as either a fraction or 1 divided by the reciprocal, which is cosine, of 31.67. Again, remember, make sure your calculator is in degrees. So if you happen to have cleared your calculator, make sure you double check it. Again, the easiest way to double check it is either hit that mode button, make sure it's in degrees, or just do the tangent of 45. You should be getting 1. Now, once you do this on your calculator, 1 divided by the cosine of 31.67, or enter it as a fraction, rounded to 3 places, you should be getting 1.175. For the next one, notice it's given to me in degrees, minutes, and seconds. I need to convert this to a decimal degree first. So what I need to divide 45 by 60 and 25 by 3,600. This is what you did on the quiz. So this is divided by 60. This one will be divided by 3,600. Now again, you can do it continuous in your calculator. You can even input it like this, but use your parentheses. So once you convert this, you should be doing cosecant of 131.757, rounded to 3 places. And then in order to find this value, since there's not a cosecant button, The reciprocal to cosecant is sine, so we're going to do 1 divided by the sine of 131.757. This is going to approximately, rounded to 3 places, give me 1.341. Notice these answers are making sense because remember, the values of secant have to be a number that's either greater than 1, greater than or equal to 1, or less than or equal to -1. So the answers I'm getting so far for secant and cosecant make sense. Remember, cotangent's all real numbers, okay? But again, there's no cotangent button. So again, we have to use the reciprocal. So what I'm going to do here is cotangent is the reciprocal of tangent. So I'm going to be entering this in as 1 over tangent of 81.8. And then rounded to 3 decimal places. This is going to be 0.144. Because this wasn't enough here. So I'm going to do, let me add another one. Let's do the sine. Now this time, sine, there's actually a button. So if I say find the sine of 316.5, there's a button. So I just press my sine button and then hit enter. And I should be getting negative 0.688. Let's add in another example with some minutes on it. Let's find the secant of 142 degrees in 15 minutes. Everybody try it. Remember, you have to convert this. Now, if you want to just enter this in your calculator like this, and you could do cosine, and then when it opens up, 142 plus 15 divided by 60. You can do it continuous if you want. If not, it becomes cosine of 142.25. And you should be getting negative 1.265. And let's do another one where we have to just do tangent. So let's do tangent of a negative angle, negative 37 degrees. And approximately, rounded to 3 places, 0.753 negative. Let's change this. This should be a 5.4 because it's 535. So let's make this a 4. Yes. Now, the next slide, they want us to find theta. Now, again, just like before in 5.3, when we use the special right triangles, notice this restriction here. It wants us to find the values between 0 and 360. I believe in the homework tonight, it only asks you to find one angle. It's only going to ask you between 0 and 90. However, on the test, it's going to ask you for the full quadrant, or all 4. Okay, so this is where we have to use the same rules that we learned in 5.3. So let me review those rules before we get our reference angles here. So remember, we have our X and our Y axis. This is quadrant 1. This is where your reference angle is going to be located. Then in quadrant 2, this is where in order to get the angle measure from that quadrant, we have to do 180 minus the reference angle. In quadrant 3, we're going to do 180 plus the reference angle. And in quadrant 4, we're going to do 360 minus the reference angle. Now, when we do this on our calculator, it's going to give us the reference angle. And then from there, we're also going to do our all students take calculus to figure out which 2 quadrants our answer is located in. Now, remember before in 5.3, remember when it was plus minus, that's when I get all 4 quadrants. But this one, the first couple are just going to be 2 answers. So for the first one, there is a sine button, but if you remember when we were solving the right triangles, when we look for an angle measure, we're doing the inverse. So we have to hit that second key or the shift key, whatever it is on your calculator. So you should be hitting the second button or the shift, and then the sine button, And then it should be opening up sine to the -1. Then you're going to put in the decimal that's there, or the number that's there. So 0.67453. You don't have to put the 0. You're going to hit enter. And we're going to round our answer to 3 decimal places. So once I do this on my calculator, you should be getting 42.420. This problem, remember, there are 2 angle measures that will give me this answer, the 0.67453. So this is where I have to do my all students take calculus. And I'm looking to see where sine is positive. Sine is positive in quadrant 1 and in quadrant 2. Well, I already found the angle from quadrant 1. That's my reference angle. So now to find the other angle measure, which is theta, I'm going to take 180 and I subtract 42.420. Once I do that subtraction, I get 137.580. So the 2 answers from quadrant 1 is the 42.420, and from quadrant 2, where sine is positive also, is 137.580. Okay, so for tangent, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm looking for an angle. I'm looking for theta. So I have to hit the shift key or the second key. Then this time I'm going to hit tangent. And then it'll open up tangent -1. And in it, I put 1.45. I hit enter. To be getting 55.408 because it's 77. And we're going to round it to 3 places. Now again, I have to do my all students take calculus. So over here, all students take calculus. I'm looking to see which quadrant tangent is positive. Tangent is positive in quadrant 1. So this is my first answer, but it's also positive in quadrant 3. So I'm going to go ahead and do 180 plus 55.408. Once I add those, my angle from quadrant 3 is 235.408. So 235.408. And these are all degrees. So for number 12, let me go ahead and do it down here. So this one is cotangent. So I know its reciprocal is tangent. So when I go to enter this, I'm going to be doing tangent -1 because I'm hitting the shift key or the second key. It'll open up the parentheses. And then now I do the 1 divided by 1.27893. Hit enter. 38.022 because it's 0219, so we're going to round it to 22. So again, let's do our all students take calculus. I'm looking to see where cotangent is positive. Cotangent is positive in quadrant 1 and in quadrant 3. So I already have quadrant 1's answer. So now to get quadrant 3, I take 180 and I need to add the 38.022. Once I add, I end up with 218.022. So that will be my second angle for theta, which will give me the 1.27893. So these are my 2 answers, quadrant 1, quadrant 3. Now, here's the same question, but the answer is negative. Now, if you choose to enter the problem and you enter it in as a negative, you're not going to get the reference angle from quadrant 1. So what I recommend you do is whenever this is a negative number, enter it in as positive so you can get the reference angle, but then do the calculations where it's negative. Everybody understand what I just said? All right. If you go ahead, try and enter this as a negative number. Let's see what we get. Let's do it first. Let me write it down here. 13. So it was cotangent of cotangent of theta equals negative 1.27893. So when you do this on your calculator, if you enter it in as second tan, and then that opens up tangent negative 1, then you're going to do 1 divided by. Now this is what you shouldn't do. So negative, if you enter it in as negative, you're going to end up getting negative 38.022. This is an angle in quadrant 4. It's a negative angle. This is not your reference angle. So if you choose to do this, just know that this is not your reference angle, and you would need to figure out what the angle is in quadrant 1. So my advice to you is when this answer here is negative, enter it in as positive to get the reference angle. So we already had done that on number 12. So we already saw that when we enter this in, tangent negative 1 divided by 1.27893, I get a reference angle of 38.022. Now, remember, we're looking to see where tangent is negative. All students take calculus. Tangent's negative here and here. So that's why the 38.022 is not my answer. It's just what I'm going to use to find the answer from quadrant 2 and 4. So remember, in quadrant 2, it's 180 minus that reference angle. So I'm going to do 180 minus 38.022. Once I do that calculation, you're going to get 141.978. And then for quadrant 4, remember this is 360 minus the reference angle. So 360 minus 38.022 to be getting 321.978. So whenever the answer is negative, know to enter it in as a positive so you get the angle measure from quadrant 1. We don't want the negative measure from quadrant 4. So what if I ask you, let's try this one. Find sine of theta when sine equals 1.234. Try it on your calculator. Let's see what you get. Remember the range of values that sine's supposed to take on. Sine has to be between -1 and +1. This is bigger than 1. So this will be a help when you do this on your calculator, that you don't panic and think, oh no, my calculator is broken. What's wrong? Why am I getting error? It's because this is impossible. If you remember that homework from 5-1. So this is impossible. It's no solution. So it's there are no values of theta that will give me 1.234 when I do sine. Now, if it was cosecant, it would work. But sine cannot be a number greater than 1. So understand when you get error, if it's not in the range it was supposed to have, then that's going to be your reassurance that you did push the buttons correctly on your calculator.